For what?
So what I'll do is, before we get started, is I'll bring out my panelists. Come on over, guys, and sit down. What we're going to do as we get rolling here is, because I know it's the middle of the afternoon, and I know everybody's kind of, even though you just had your dose of coffee, we're going to get you fired up a little bit, and we'll have some participation, because I want to get an idea, on behalf of our panelists, how much experience everyone here has had with China. So if we could bring the house lights up just a little bit. Good. So by a show of hands, if you will, give me an idea. Great, we got hands up already. This is fantastic. We like China, we've been there. Okay, how many people here have been to China more than once? Great. How many people have been to China to do business there, not just to do tourism and travel? Great. How many people here have been to China and have had a deal go bad on them in China? There's a few of those as well. Okay, yeah, if I could, I'd be holding up both hands, trust me. I've been lived there long enough. Well, the thing about online video in China is it's probably one of the toughest businesses to be in, especially given your competition in many respects is the government of the People's Republic of China in the form of CCTV. But we've got a group of panelists up here today that between the four of them have been through just about everything you can be through in the media business in China, and particularly in businesses that are working in and around different aspects of online video, which I would argue is probably the most dynamic part of the China media business today. If you take a look over here to my right, not your right, my right, is Sylvia Guo. Sylvia is Managing Director of Liquid Thread China, Starcom MediaVest. So she is a marketing practitioner. Before that, she was with MTV Asia in the, as she likes to put it, in the sex, drugs, and rock and roll business. Of course, we have to be careful. We are in Singapore, so we don't want to talk too much about the drugs and the sex. On the other hand, over to my left, Scarlett Li, who is CEO and founder of Zebra Media. Now, you can read more about Scarlett both at her site and in the book. But one of the reasons that it's so great to have Scarlett up here is because Zebra Media, among all the companies that I've run into in China, really brings together artists, sponsors, and the media in some powerful and innovative ways in a market where it's not really easy to do that kind of a thing. So she's an innovator in a business that's just tough to do business in, much less innovate. Back over to my right again, William Baobin is Managing Director of the Singtel Innovate Fund, and before which he spent 4 years as, what is the correct title? I want to say lead, as partner, okay, with SoftBank China and India Holdings. So William he lives in Shanghai. He's an extremely familiar sight for most of us up there who've been involved in the internet business, not just as a guy who frequently has represented the money, but as someone who brings to his work an awful lot of insight about the way business is done, but more importantly, the way business can be done in China. And then finally, but by no means least, Alvin Lee over to my left. Alvin joined Time Warner in July 2001, 10 years ago, right? Almost, as Director of International Relations and Public Policy. He's now Executive Director of International Relations and Public Policy for Time Warner Asia. And obviously they think he's really doing a good job because he is still there. So, and it's a big, anybody who has ever had to handle government relations in Asia generally and China specifically knows it is not a small job, and it is certainly not one for amateurs. So those are our four panelists, and we're going to dive right into some questions because we want to make sure that we also have enough time to get to your questions. First of all, and I'm going to aim this at the panel, so guys chime in as you prefer. Everybody here in the audience, you're familiar, how many people, one more show of hands, how many people here are familiar with Youku and Tudo? Youku or Tudo, okay? That's a good percentage of you, okay. So sites like Youku and Tudo and Yaoku, Coolio, right, exactly, Maoku, have been described as YouTube clones, okay? As far as you guys are concerned, is that accurate? Yes or no? Are they are they YouTube clones, or is there something different going on in China?
In terms of technology, yes. In terms of technology, yes.
Okay.
But in terms of content aggregation, marketing methods, it has a local aspect, I think.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference is that the YouTube alike of the world, they actually are a UGC site. And nowadays in China, for Youku, Tudou, what have you, they actually invest in original content. So this is a very fast advancement in China overnight right now.
So I think one way to look at it is Tudou actually launched 6 months before YouTube did. Tudou has moved much more quickly into licensed content, and now YouTube is following. So YouTube seems to be following the China players rather than the other way around.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that it was that Tudou liked to point out, and Tudou to give you an idea of how different Tudou is, they hold a film festival every year, and they're getting into original, not just sponsored content, but out and out original content, and they're sort of turning into mini media companies, really.
Right. They're making their own content. And just to give a sense of scale, this is as of 2 years ago, Tudou and Youku individually were 30 times the viewership of YouTube Global. Okay, 30 times. So at that time, YouTube was doing about 1 billion minutes a month, and Tudou and Youku were doing about 30 billion minutes per month each.
So how fast is the online video market in China changing? I mean, I wrote a report at the beginning of last year. I found by the end of the year it had to be updated. I'm finding now I'm probably going to have to update it again over the summer. How fast do you guys see this changing?
I think this morning Robert Tessette had this slide up there saying like there are 750 million online video viewers out there in the world. So China alone is 205 million. So it's really, really fast. But that's a very interesting aspect of China, because for the rest of the world, you talk about like you want to watch online, you know, you make sure your server speed is fast, and then your video content has to be short. But then, you know, 30 minutes film still works for China right now. So if you talk about, well, I have a slide which I cannot show you guys, so I have to read from here. So basically on, but the hours spent per viewers in China is about 7.5 hours compared to, you know, Japan, which is like 16.8 hours per day. So this is from a ComScore study just last year. And then the interesting aspect is that, you know, Chinese audience viewers online are still used to like long form shows, like your 30 minutes. Like recently, last year, there was this film that stormed China, the digital market. It's by these brothers, they call it the Chopsticks Brother. It's funded by the China Film Academy. It's a 30-minute show, and it's got 60 million hits. And it's funded by Chevrolet. And so I just have to kind of expand further, because coming from branded entertainment, so a lot of advertisers with the restriction on TV right now, well, restriction on TV and also the lack of inventory on TV, a lot of advertisers are actually moving into branded content online. So this is very big right now, you know, going to ranging from some of my clients like P&G Crest has just did, you know, a very successful series of 10 episodic of 6 to 8 minutes, you know, webisodes online, and it's ranging. It drove a hit of like 30 million. Yeah.
So are we going to shorter form stuff online? Because I mean, I remember when Youku and Tudou were really starting to get their footing in 2008, 2009. People were going there to watch movies. They were going there to watch American Idol. They were going there to watch their favorite TV programs from home and abroad. And so they were sitting and spending, you know, hour, 2 hours a day staring at this stuff, right? Or is this changing?
I think that you've got separate audiences, just like you have in the U.S. or developed markets or more developed markets. So you have people watching movies, people watching TV series, but you also have browsers, snackers, who go to the front page or the fashion page or the car page within these, I guess you could call them Hulus of China, and watching 5-minute, 10-minute clips. But I would say on average, still the vast majority are watching longer form content. The shorter form is becoming more important, though.
Why is that? Is that because they're starting to change the device that they're watching this on, or is it just they're changing their lifestyle habits?
I think a combination of mobile. Mobile's pretty small right now, but there's some mobile there. I think also you've got more short-form content that's more interesting to the audience being pushed by the platforms themselves. So the vast majority of the content that is being pushed in there, fashion, car, it's shorter form. It's 5, 10 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes, as opposed to the 24-minute episodes.
Sylvia, how do online viewing habits? Okay, you were talking about how it differs from Japan, but generally speaking, looking across Asia, how do you see online viewer habits sort of changing, or how are they different?
I think what William said just now was right, and there's also a very, you have to look into the whole social norm of China. Basically, content is in need, okay? So, like, we have a lot of restrictions from, like, SAFT, on all the shows that you can import into China, and a lot of actually users go online and watch it. People can go online and watch the latest Gossip Girls, Vampire Diaries, faster than your DVDs. So what America is showing is already online right now on various CDs, on Sina, Sohu, what have you, and these are legal. These are original format, HD quality, purchased online and funded by advertisers. So I think the users, the Chinese audience are actually pretty much spoiled. They get the best of both worlds. They get, like, good branded short form programmings and long form programmings as well. So right now, the situation is that the numbers of films or numbers of videos viewed per viewer is still low, simply because they are watching long forms more, and short forms are catching up. But if you talk about the unique viewers, unique users, it's about 205 million. So this is quite a huge contrast, I would say.
All right, let's
just before we move on,
yeah.
David, just to reiterate with Sylvia, there is a lot of content that is starting to appear. A lot of the times, the big problem we've had is that it's illegal content that's that's been available on site. It's only now that, I think within the last year, that ISPs are actually really taking it seriously. As a content provider, they're recognizing our notices, taking it down, and we're starting to negotiate contracts, so you will get legitimate Gossip Girls.
Yeah, I'm saying they are legitimate, yes. Really high def quality, good stuff.
So that's transitioning, and so even though, from my point of view, business in China is no way easy. It is a very tough market for us. It's a potential market, and so despite the toughness, I'm actually quite bullish on the changes that are occurring, and we're actually looking at even more content. We're looking at local formats, so local Gossip Girls maybe, that will be able to launch in the market in either short or long form.
Actually, sorry, for local Gossip Girl, TV is doing it right now as well. So we're not touching that. That's about piracy. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about
I think
piracy.
in terms of content provision and content monetizing on the video sites, I think we have experienced quite very good results. We started to organize music festivals in China, the Zebra Music Festivals in China since 2009. And in 2009, Tudou or Youku, they are our partners. More like a promoter with us. So we basically were generating a lot of eyeballs from Tudou and Youku, from live broadcasting our content. But this year we are able to monetize from them. So this is, I think it's good news. I think from Sylvia just said that the advertiser is looking at opportunities. So companies like Tudou and Youku, they have gradually developing strategies on music, on movie, on whatever different category, and also categorize their audience. So then, therefore, they're able to sell to appropriate audience and to advertisers, which I think this is the change for the past 3 years. We actually experienced that.
That gives me a great segue, because I want to talk about monetization. We're at the point right now where in China, probably 10% of advertising budgets, depending on whose estimates you look at, right? 10 to 15% of advertising budgets are now going to digital. Of that, oh gosh, maybe a grand total of 300, 400, 500 million is going into online video. So in aggregate. I mean, you know, this year Yoku expects they'll bring in 70, 80 million in online video. They typically have 20% of the market share. So let me take it from another point of view, which is the advertisers. Does it make sense for advertisers to use online video as a channel?
Sure. So I've been going to this Music Matters conference for the last 5 years, and about 3 years ago, I was on up after the manager of U2, and the guy just really pissed me off. You've got content providers out there complaining. You know, this is 4 or 5 years ago, about how they can't monetize content. So I decided to try and do something about it, and over the last 3 years, basically, I wasted a lot of my own money trying to figure out a way to help content owners, you know, really monetize. And we heard today a lot about advertising, but I'm happy to say that after 3 years of flushing money down the toilet, I've basically got a model where we're taking music and music-related video, we're distributing it on the internet, paired with brands. This year we'll do about 1,000 episodes, 120 million impressions. Okay, and the average ARPUs that we're getting are between $5 to $10 US, not ARPUs, but CPMs, $5 to $10 US CPMs from brands who want to associate their brands with emotional, you know, heart-grabbing content, and then capitalize on that emotion to drive to engagement with their brands or even to purchase. So for a regular, you know, banner ad, you don't do too well. You get maybe, they're inflated, but 0.5 to 1.5% click-through, that's inflated. We're seeing 400 to 600% uplift in conversion to click-through when you marry the content to targeted audience and you integrate the brands pretty lightly, but integrate the brands with the content. And I'd say 75% of the content that we're putting out this year is music related.
So online, you've found a way in online video to actually make it work for advertisers.
It works for advertisers, and we rev share with the content providers. So the more popular, in the beginning, you don't get too much because we're investing in your content to popularize it. But as your content becomes more popular, we try and lock you in. The revenue shares that you get as your content becomes more popular go up.
Does this sound like his pitch?
It certainly does, and
Yeah.
I think we're negotiating this.
You're not saying that officially for Time Warner. No, it's not disclosed. But is it okay? Is it? You're saying it's effective because my next question was going to be: is this effective? And you're getting what kind of click-through rates to action?
Okay, so we're getting click-through rates are good for brands, not so much in terms of conversion to sale, but click-through rates for one campaign we just finished up, we got 4.5 to 6.5% click-through rates, which is high even for China, even with the inflation. The key thing is once they're on the landing page, we actually got more than half of the phone numbers and names in there were actually real. People picked up the phone. And then there was conversion to, this is actually conversion to sale. There were conversions to sale, not too many, but that might have had something to do with the fact that we were selling software as a service over a video channel, which is mostly consumers. But it does work, and we're actually willing to take risk with the brands that we're working with and the e-commerce providers that we're working with, where we're willing to buy on a CPM basis, and we're willing to get paid on a click-through rate basis, which is then directly tracked by our customers on the e-commerce side to sale. So if we don't perform, they just cancel the show.
Okay, because I don't want to turn this into yet another advertising panel today, I'm going to shift our gears a little bit, and I'm going to move us over to talk about content. And specifically, I want to touch on the issue of piracy and the protection of intellectual property a bit, because that's going to be a major concern for anybody who's in the content provision business, both here and at Music Matters. How does piracy of intellectual property impact the building of a working online business model? I mean, is there that much piracy out there that you know, they don't need to come to you to do anything about it? They can just grab the content anywhere.
You want me to go again? Okay.
Well, I'm looking at you, but I'm actually thinking about the guy over there.
So I think,
crick in my neck.
you know, I'm not from the content world. I'm actually, you know, investment banking background. But my general view is that the content is not particularly useful unless you can monetize it. Okay, it's basically worthless unless you can monetize it. From a pure numbers, don't want to piss everybody off in here, but from a pure numbers standpoint, what we want to try and do is help get everybody paid. So I think that for me is the key. I'll kick it back to Alvin.
And I think those that have heard me speak before know, you know, as a content company, we're very passionate about the issue, and China is one of the most difficult markets. It's one that we have very little market access, plus the piracy rate is you know, one of the worst in the world. However, I think through a lot of action and from not just foreign industry, because I think what we need to have happen is development of local industry. And when you've got more local industry, more local content, you're going to have governments take more interest in the matter. And so where even just a year ago, well, less than a year ago, I would have been very bearish on the China market. It's something that almost all our content was being pirated. There was no way that we could get much legitimate content on, and when we did, it was pirated again. But what we've had now is very strong government interaction, and the government has launched a campaign. It was originally a 6-month campaign. They extended it for 3 more months for a 9-month campaign to deal with piracy, and the reaction from the ISPs has been very positive. Now, will this continue after the campaign is over? I'm not sure. I am really hoping that it will, because it's allowing us to change our opinion about China, about the type of discussions we're having with the ISPs and the type of content that we'll supply to them as well.
So would you agree that it doesn't matter so much what the foreign content providers do, jumping up and down, yelling, screaming, getting the MPA to go in and bang their shoe on the table to end piracy? It's more getting the local content providers to go to their own government and say, hey guys, we're getting screwed. You need to start improving IPR protection.
Well, it's a bit of both, but until you have the local producers trumpeting their own horn, we're not going to get much traction.
Well, I don't know about the IPR side, because we generally give our content away for free, and we monetize on the other side. But
you're one of those.
Yeah.
Well, and there's different business models.
But yeah, I know. There's definitely. But I think overall, we've seen some very positive trends over the last 6 months in terms of protection. My favorite BitTorrent site just got it's a number 12th most popular site in China. It's called VeriCD, and what is it? 4 months ago, they basically cut the BitTorrent links on there. So now that site, well, their traffic is much reduced, but that site is just pointing to the legal versions of the content, Gossip Girls, on the various video sites. So they still have traffic, but the BitTorrent side is gone. And that's a huge change. The barriers to entertainment of pirated content are increasing. So it's never going to be perfect. You can be in any country, anywhere in the world, and get pirated content. But the barriers to get that pirated content are going up, and people are willing to they're willing to actually sit through ads, and then soon, hopefully, we'll see whether they're willing to pay, especially on mobile, for some content going forward.
We'll talk about mobile in a second, but I want to ask Scarlett, look, you produce content, all right? You work really hard to put these music programs together, these concerts, and you partner with the online video sites.
Yep.
Are you comfortable from an IPR standpoint letting your programs go out onto online video?
Well, this is it's a two-way sword, right? I have been in the Chinese music industry, pop music industry, for 11 years. So, you know, the music business is really the pre-production program of the video business now. So the music industry has been through that process until now, the video industry picking up. I think what previous Alvin said it was quite correct because we didn't have, I mean, in the 97, 98, early 2000, we don't have a lot of local interest in the content, online management of the content, especially music content business. That's why nobody cares. But 3 or 4 years ago, we start to have the video business. And when the video business came out, the backers of this video business are a lot of local investors, or maybe some even the princelings of the key government officials. So you can see a major change in the whole thing. And you will see maybe the first, maybe 2004 and 5, you see a lot of pirate content on the video. But starting from 2006, it's all clear out. So it's from 2006 onwards until now, it's like, shh. It's like, you know, very, very, it's a highway towards all this way. So then now we go back to this industry, and music industry now is also taking effect because you have real people, not real people in power now investing in the music industry. So
see.
It's changing.
Okay, see, all right, everybody, we now have discovered the secret for IPR control in China. Make sure that the investors in the intellectual property are related somehow to the nation's leaders. Okay, all of a sudden the IPR issues.
I didn't mean that. I mean
no,
the
well,
of local
this is what one
interest.
could read into this conversation.
But to answer your question, so we have suffered from that from 97 to 2004. So the music people in China all went to live. That's why I'm in the live performance industry. We organize concerts and we organize music festivals. So when we start to initiate these music festivals, we will see the Youku, the Tudou, the Sina, and the Sohu, all these local portals, local video sites as our promotional partners. But as I said, starting from 3 years ago, we start to feel there is a monetizing process coming along, and which for whatever the reason behind it is good news for us. So so far I have been very comfortable with the partners.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking forward to the day we can really see that in the TV or movie site.
Well, I think that you guys got flawed with advertising before, but the advertisers are your friends of the content providers. Because the thing is, the advertisers won't put their ads next to pirated content. So the Youkus, the Tudous, those folks can't make any money on UGC or pirated content. So that basically pushed a lot of the pirated content out of the major players. And because it's so expensive to run a video site, the major players have gobbled up, the top 9 guys have gobbled up the entire market. And it's because the agencies and the advertisers.
So
really? I want to ask Sylvia, does the advertisers will check with Youku, say, did you buy this concert from Zebra? Will they check? They won't, right?
One of the biggest responsibility of agency is evaluation. Definitely we will check the ROI first, legitimacy of the content before recommending the brands to actually invest in it. So yes, I think William is really right because for a brand to actually fund the events or fund the content online, it's very critical. Yeah.
Not to say there aren't a few advertisers in China who would say, who cares whether it's legitimate or not? Just run my stuff because it's a good show.
Yeah,
I
but
think if you go to the pirate side, there's still advertisers, but maybe not branded advertisers.
There you go. Right.
I think, sorry, maybe add in later. I think China is also very interesting. You have the MNC's clients, the brands, and the local clients, the local brands. So a lot of local brands like Pupukao, these are like real, money invest. They just throw their money into the, just like if you go to like the New Year's concert, you turn to 4 TV stations, they're all sponsored by Pupukao.
It's a local
local
phone
brands,
manufacturer.
Yeah, so these people, I think, Alvin and probably William can add in from the investors and legal sides, there is also a lack of knowledge on certain brands, like the very, very local brands in China. They just have so much they want to invest in, and they are looking for ways to actually go through the legal ways, but they need more guidance. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, and you know, we're active in an organization in China, but this is more with the MNCs, with the large brands, the Quality Brands Protection Committee, where there's a committee on QBPC that is active in monitoring the websites and letting, because sometimes, you know, say if it's a Ford or GM or Louis Vuitton, whatever, you're not going to know whether your ad is up against against a pirate site as well. And so, you know, we've got a process of notifying people, so then they notify the agencies that says, pull my ad. And so when so dollars matter, and when that starts to happen, then ISPs take notice.
All right, two more topics I want to cover before we hand over to the audience, because I want to hear some questions in there. And judging by some of the tweets that are coming through, there will be questions. Generally speaking, and this is for the panel, what about mobile? You know, everybody talks about China as a mobile market. Oh, we have 952 million mobile subscribers. We're the biggest mobile market on the planet. Now, admittedly, of that 952 million, there's probably only about 50, 60 million smartphones that could handle a decent video signal. But at what point are we going to have a market for mobile video in China?
You want to? My experience, because we have been distributing videos with the mobile partners, China Mobile. I think the handset conversion to smartphones still going to take a bit of time, and also because we have three licenses now. We have one with China Mobile, one with China Telecom, and one with Unicom. And in terms of technology-wise, I think the one with Unicom is the best. In terms of marketing and management, I think China Telecom is good, China Mobile is good, but in terms of client base, China Mobile has the most, but they have the least technology because they have got a local technology license from the local. I mean, basically,
they're using TDS CDMA, which is purely a local. Yeah, they had to do that.
So, so the problem with China Telecom and China Unicom, they need to develop, not quite Unicom, but Telecom. They need to develop their user base very slowly, very slowly. So far, I think it's quite far ahead from what we see.
Technically, it's there. Is it a business?
To be frank,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
I mean,
sure.
right now, not so much a business.
Yeah. Maybe 5 years later?
3 to 5, for sure.
Yeah.
But right now, the major problem is you can't really stream video too well. It's too expensive. So how do you get the video onto the phone or via Wi-Fi? So right now we've got about, 8 million iPhones out there,
Yeah.
give or take. 20
like
million
0.5%.
Yeah. So it's still pretty early days.
But from the past 6 months, Android platform
Right.
has increased to 3%, I think.
Right.
So
I think,
if that figure increased to 5% of the total mobile user, then if they can use Wi-Fi or whatever, then I think mobile video is in place.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to charge for mobile video. Not really. It's a lot easier than for online. I mean, people are generally willing to pay for something on the mobile than versus online in terms of their training over the last 5 years by the carriers.
And just for your background, for the mobile users, they not necessarily all the mobile users has access to broadband at home. A lot of mobile users in China, they don't have access to broadband. And they were educated previously for 10 years by China Mobile and China Unicom to pay over the phone through the pay system of their own system. So that's why William is saying that the mobile user tend to pay for content.
Here's an interesting statistic just to throw out to you. The last survey done by the Chinese government of internet users in China, they discovered that 30% of the people using the internet in China only access the internet through a mobile device. 30% access the internet through a combination of a mobile device and a desktop. So 60% of all those, of the 450 million counted internet users in China are using mobile devices to get to the internet either part of the time or all the time. So interesting little factoid for you. So let me switch back because I want to touch on regulation really quickly. You cannot talk about media in China and not talk about the overhang of government regulation, and especially in this industry. And you're not going to like to hear this, but you've heard me say it before. and you've read my report. So here's the thing. At what point does the government come in and say, hang on, we want to control media in this country. This is media. It's increasingly foreign-owned because you've got people like Innovate, not to mention, not to pick on you, but look at Coolio and look at Youku, all right? They're on the financial markets overseas. They're de facto partly foreign-owned. At what point does the government come in and say, hey, we don't like this. Either you take, either you buy back the shares from the foreigners, or we shut you down and we give all your business to CCTV. Is there a risk of that? Is it going to happen? How are you preparing for it?
Okay. I'd say there's a huge amount of investment going on by CCTV, by Shanghai Media Group, by a lot of the provincial satellite providers in putting up a viable online solution, online and to some extent mobile. A friend of mine just joined Movideo, and they're making a big push into China to provide platforms to all these cities and provincial players. I would say that until those guys get up and running and are scaling, it'd be very difficult for there to be a large-scale crackdown on the top 10 guys.
But is this a when question rather than an if question?
I think I would look at it slightly differently. I think that the top 10 players out there, we're talking like Sina, Tencent, these are big video players. Sohu, they're very
Provided
well.
they already have very big client base.
They have a very large client base. They've done lots of things that could have potentially gotten them shut down in the past. Yeah. Like, there's 4 Twitter clones that got shut down, but Sina, Tencent, Sohu, they all have Twitter clones up. They're just well regulated. They abide by the law in China. So I think the model is that you're going to have increasingly large state government players in the future, but that they'll let the, I'd say the elephants in the room, the top 10 odd portals in the room continue to operate. So it'll be a more competitive market, but competition is good for content owners. Competition is good for advertisers, drives down the cost. So I think overall we're going to have a slightly more, we're going to have a pretty level playing field. There's going to be more competition in the market. And while there's a possibility that 1 or 2 guys might get whacked, like 56.com got whacked in the early days, they got slapped on the hand, they had to turn some things off for a while, and that was the end of the company. The big guys have good enough relations where they self-police to abide by the law to the extent where the current market environment is not going to change too significantly. So that's my view.
I think to add to that, I think the question William has gave very good answers. I think it's a leveling playing field. As I mentioned before, the interests are aligned.
Okay. Yeah, but I just want to add that, but it's still more complicated than that because things could change at any time. What we're still seeing are even an internal fight within ministries as to who has control over what type of content, who can approve. So that's an internal issue in China that's been going on for years. I think definitely SARFT is throwing a lot of weight around, and so at the moment, the internet has had a, I wouldn't say a free reign, but a fairly free reign. The risk is always at some point there will be some new regulation that will change some of the content that you can put on, but that's something that we'll have to adjust to that, or can we ride the wave and just keep going?
And also I think not forgetting by 2015 the government is really pushing 三网合一, so it's like the 3 platforms combining into one. So like contents that you produce on TV has to be clear on online, has to be clear on mobile, so the provincial, the satellite TVs are really working hard into materializing this as well by year 2015. So we foresee a lot of advanced changes coming very soon.
We have a very little time for some questions from the audience. If we could bring the lights up a bit, and if we've got any microphones around. Anybody have any questions for the panel? I've been monopolizing them and asking all the questions. about this, about anything generally with media in China?
Come on,
This
guys.
is Tony McGinn here from Movideo. Doing a lot of work up in China, so we're slowly but surely working the market out. A question for the panel. We find it a sensitive subject to get people to talk about what they are actually doing in stream numbers and how transparent they want to be with the market on that. It comes back to the whole face thing in China. I think people like to publish stream numbers that are somewhat inflated. What's the panel's experience on that? I'm talking about video streams, obviously.
Okay, so if you're paying for streams, they're going to be inflated. If you're paying for something else, then they won't really bother inflating the streams too much. The great thing about us partnering, you know, because our companies are more like media companies as opposed to ad companies, they're allowing us to do third-party tracking, whereas most agencies and brands traditionally have not allowed to do that. So our data, you know, as long as you're within 15% of what your third-party tracking says, that's about right. And the stream numbers are, you know, relatively accurate. So you just have to make sure, as the panel's been saying, that the interests are aligned. Yeah.
I have a question here in front.
Hi, my name is Jay Otway. William, you mentioned earlier how you felt that China video sites were almost leading the way, and YouTube was now almost copying the behavior of creating more premium content. The idea of China iterating faster now, coming up with more interesting social models, perhaps leading the West, do you think Twitter would be wise to follow Weibo?
Okay, so anybody here use Weibo? Okay, anybody here use Twitter client? Okay, which ones thinks that Weibo client's better? No one. Okay. Two. So I think that in terms of a product, the Weibo's in China are much further advanced versus Twitter in terms of the features, the functionality, the pictures, the videos, the linking. I think the major difference is that in the world there's one Twitter, and in China there's 4 major Weibos and some minor ones. Now everybody talks about, you know, Sina Weibo as a big one. Actually, Tencent Weibo has more users. Just as Sina Weibo has higher quality users. But there's competition. So when you see competition, you see innovation. Now, Twitter's got some competition from the likes of Facebook, but Facebook so far hasn't done a particularly good job. Whereas in China, you've got 4 guys kicking the crap out of each other. So what happens there? You've got the Weibos in China going out there and proactively paying famous high-quality tweeters to Weibo or tweet on their platform and not on another platform. That's good for everybody, at least in terms of a content provider.
And these are companies with hugely deep pockets. I mean, Sina, you know, it can afford. You know, you talk to Charles Chow, he can afford to put money into Weibo until the cows come home because he's got so much money coming in on the Sina side. He can just keep pushing and pushing, and that's what's able to drive the competitiveness. Sadly, I haven't found a decent client application that I like to use.
Well, the Sina application itself is so much superior to the Twitter one, whereas Twitter is relying on TweetDeck and Seismic and the others. So Sina is not that bad. They're mobile. They're using some partners on the mobile side. But I think the key thing here is that the competition is what's going to drive the innovation. And I think the competition in China is really fierce.
Okay, we are almost 4 minutes over, and I want to apologize to our organizers for doing that. But thanks, everybody, for first of all, thank you to the panel for a great discussion. We tried to cover an awful lot of ground in a very short period of time. And thank you all, and thank you for your questions.